Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today is the Commission Public Forum on our draft decision for South Gippsland Water. My name is Simon Corden, and I'm one of the commissioners at the Essential Services Commission. To let you know, the forum is being recorded to ensure those unable to attend can observe. Any statement, comment, or question you make will be included in the recording, which we plan to make available on our website. So no defamatory comments, please. I'd like to just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands you are on today. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of the service area of South Gippsland Water, the Gunai and the Bunurong peoples. We know that water and the protection of waterways is so important to Aboriginal people, and so this is critical that how these processes go to reflect the importance that the Aboriginal people place on the water resources that South Gippsland Water is responsible for managing. Thank you for taking the time together this afternoon to come here. I'd like to just introduce the staff of the Commission. So Dean will be addressing us shortly. Dean Whittington, who's a Senior Regulatory Manager at the Commission, responsible for overseeing the water processes that we do. I've got a couple of other members of the staff here, Peter and Rob, which is great to be here. We've also got quite a number of attendees from the business. We've got Rob Murphy, who's the CEO, which is fantastic, and he'll be speaking shortly. And we've also got Nicola Heppenstall, who's the acting chair of the board, who's also been able to join us too. So that's fantastic, as well as a number of other staff from South Gippsland Water. So it's really great that we've got so many of you are able to be here to both hear the people who are here in person and any questions we might get from people online. So I'd like to also thank the people on the call for making the time to join us today. A few housekeeping issues before we get to the agenda. If you've got any questions or comments while someone is talking, if you're online, can you type them into the chat and we'll build them into the conversation. For those of you online, if you could keep your microphone muted when not speaking, that would, avoid feedback and background noise. In addition to your participation today, there's an opportunity to provide written feedback through the Engage Victoria website. So, but if there's another method that you'd like to get your feedback into the process, please let us know how we can more effectively engage, because we're keen to get your feedback at every step. The web address for Engage Victoria will be on the slides that we're about to share with you. So I'll use the first part of today's forum to just give you a brief introduction to our role in price regulation. But as always, the main purpose of this event is to actually hear from the community. So from those of you who have been able to come along, and also from those people who are online, and to get answer any questions you might have about our draft decision. So to shape our discussion today, how we're going to cover off, Dean will outline how we assess the pricing submission and our draft decision. And then Rob from South Gippsland will be able to give us we'll give the opportunity to explain how they're planning to respond to our draft decision. And then we'll have an opportunity to hear from you, both those of you who are able to be here and those of you who are online. So we appreciate being able to have an honest and open conversation with you today, reflecting on the fact that it's recorded, so don't get too honest. Because insights from these engagements really help shape our thinking about how we assess the proposal, and also help shape South Gippsland Water as to how they respond. So it's really important that we get this feedback. So our role in price regulation, we regulate a range of sectors: the energy sector, the water sector, and parts of the transport sector as well. So and we also oversee the Fair Go Rates program, which is a program which controls the rate at which council rates can increase. And we also administer the Victorian Energy Program. So those who might be familiar, that's the program that provides things like the subsidised LED lights, change of lights, shower roses and things like that. And we've been regulating water prices for more than 20 years, including South Gippsland Water. For the water sector, we approve prices and service standards and monitor and report on performance and administer the customer service codes. And we're currently reviewing the water prices that are going to apply from the 1st of July approved for 14 water businesses. So we've got quite a few water businesses to work with over a pretty intense period. So if you see any dark circles on your details, that's why. The prices we approve reflect an assessment of what the efficient costs water businesses need to recover to provide these important services to the community. And following consultation, we'll issue a determination which sets the maximum prices that South Gippsland may charge customers. So to give you a bit more detail, I'll now hand over to Dean, who will run us through it in a bit more detail and also talk to the slides and see our points.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming along. As Simon mentioned, I'll give you a high-level overview of how we assess a price submission, so which price submission and just to consider as well. Basically, our task is to assess a submission against a set of rules that are given to us by government. So as an economic regulator, we just can't come up with a price. We do need to think about things under a certain set of criteria. And the detail of that is set out in something called the Water Industry Regulatory Order. So it really guides what we do in terms of our pricing role. And that requires us to focus on a few things like efficiency of prices, the interests of customers are broadly taken care of, and so on. Then also, off the back of that, before a price review, we issue guidance to the water businesses. So what this does is really, in a bit more detail, sets out what we need to see in a price submission to assess it against the WIRO, the Water Industry Regulatory Order. I'm going to try and avoid acronyms as much as we can.
But acronym,
Silence on the way home. So assess that it meets the requirements of the Water Industry Regulatory Order, and our guidance also says the things the business needs to go through. So one of the big focus areas we've got is that it engages well with its community. So that's really into the guidance we issue businesses. We've introduced something called the Primo framework in 2018. That I'll deliberately use an acronym there. But I think that was a whole new way of going about water pricing, which I mentioned engagement before, really required businesses to engage well with its communities to understand what their concerns and priorities are. So that could then in turn inform the business about what it does in terms of proposals. So the sector across the board has stepped up its game around the engagement space, which is really good. And South Gippsland Water has also been part of that and extended that through the 2023 review, which is fantastic. There are some incentive properties in that framework. So there are rewards for good submissions and good processes businesses go through. So there are reputational incentives. So the business self-rates its price submission on a certain scale. So there's 4, the great leading, advanced, standard or basic. The South Gippsland Water submission was self-rated standard, and we agree with that. What that means is a business is delivering good value to its customers. So that's a relatively good outcome for the business. In terms of the other things that we need to keep in mind, we also are governed by the Water Industry Act, our role that has certain things that we need to take into account, and also the Essential Services Commission Act. And under that act, our overarching objective is to promote the long-term interests of consumers. So in terms of South Gippsland Water's price review process, as I said before, we need to make sure it's consistent with relevant legislation, also our guidance. Under the model, the water business, South Gippsland Water, really leads the whole process. So it's what we call a propose respond model. So the business gives us a submission that we need to assess against the criteria and then either agree with it or propose something different underneath that. And we're here today to talk about our draft decision, which we put out a little over a month ago. And that really is an opportunity for us to test where we've landed in our draft decision before we issue a final decision in June. And as Simon said, that will establish the prices that will apply from the 1st of July this year for the 5-year period following. So it's important to participate in. Thanks, Rob. We just summarises what I've just said. We're at the red line there in the terms of the process. So we've got submissions due to the 9th of May. So when you want to follow up today, the submission there, the way you can do that a bit later on. Essentially, the process starts a fair way in advance of this point. So the business, even before we share our guidance in October 2022, had been engaging with its community and each on a submission. They'll engage on that, their price submission, and then that turns over to our assessment. In terms of what we do, so the team of commission, and we do get help from consultants where need be, particularly around expenditure issues. We look at the engagement that South Gippsland Water undertook and how it used its feedback. So we do road tests, has the business provided appropriate information, engaged at the right time on things that customers are most interested in. And then in a price submission, we assess and take into account, well, how the technology that and consider that. Or, testing the expenditure and demand forecast. So a big part of the engagement is about prioritising what customers want. The expenditure forecast and the demand forecast really help to calculate the products. So we do spend a bit of time testing those. So that's operating costs of business, like labour and energy and things like that, and also your capital investments like raise and treating plants and renewals of assets, which is water. And also demand forecasts. Do a lot of work verifying the underlying assumptions and data. So has the most recent data being used to inform things like cost predictions? Are they reasonably based? Thinking about how South Gippsland Water has performed in the current period. So at its previous price review, it's made a number of commitments to its customers. How has it delivered on those? And it has delivered future bit of confidence in what it's proposing going forward. Last point, I've already mentioned the OPEX operating costs and their full costs, but one of the things we did look at quite closely for South Gippsland Water was a capital program, and there was a pickup in its program. So we tested the capacity to deliver that program as well as the assumptions on tested there are reasons. And so summary draft decision. So accepts a 5-year pricing period, as I mentioned earlier. Accepted an increase in prices, which I'll come to in a minute. It accepts many items of section. So robustly testing the expenditure forecast is a big focus of it. This is what we're going at 2-3% real business. So we accepted those forecasts subject to very minor proposed adjustments. Guaranteed service level scheme. So we had confidence that was retested with this customer. So these things, guaranteed service levels, really target areas of service priority for customers, and where a business doesn't meet those things, it'll be something it's a very unmeet those. So in terms of the ROI with customers, volume used, and in terms of temperatures, so business has some discretion about how it wants to set its prices, I guess, over a 5-year period, and consistent with the current period, South Gippsland Water, and that benefit the customers from that, it's the maximum time period. So it does pay things like service stuff. But we have accepted that, and a revenue requirement of about 198 million over the 5-year period, which is almost the same as what was proposed by South Gippsland Water. Yeah, it's quite a solution. Thanks, Rob. Good pause. I think moving on to bills, maybe.
Dean, can I ask you to speak up a bit? I think they're having a bit of trouble.
Okay, I'll see how I go. In terms of sorry, people. Back in the hot seat. So in terms of, before I come to the bill side of things, so there were some things we asked for more information from South Gippsland Water. No, it's fine, Rob. Just leave it there. There was one challenge we put to most businesses was to consider high inflation environment at the moment. So you're watching the news recently. So increases in consumer prices. The number came out a couple of days ago that they'd gone up by 7% over the past year. Now, the significance of that to pricing is that number's added to bills next year. So I've got this slide here. It sort of touches on that. So I've asked not all businesses to think about how it might respond to that high inflation environment now for its customers. And South Gippsland Water already did do a fair bit in its submission, I think, because we do charge below the maximum it could recover. But we've just sort of set that challenge there for all businesses. And we've got some sort of more information around something called new customer contributions, which are developer charges for new connection points to homes. So we're just testing some of the underlying cost assumptions put into that as well, probably the main things. This here under South Gippsland Water's proposal, I think Rob, you'll touch on this as well, but a typical owner-occupier in a household annual water and sewerage bill in 22-23, around 1,154 on an annual basis. You can see the estimated bills there for tenants and non-residential customers as well. And under the proposal from South Gippsland Water, that'd go up 2% in real terms. So this is excluding inflation, up 2% in real terms in 23-24, and sort of trend up to a bit over $1,300 by the end of the period. That's all excluding inflation. The dot point there at the bottom of the slide, as I mentioned earlier, the inflation number for the March quarter came out. That is added to those bills that you see in the table there for 23-24. So that 1,177, you add 7%, comes out to about 1,259. So that's an increase you'll see in nominal terms. So that's under the proposal prices that you'll see coming through as a household and a customer. Hence why we put that challenge out to water businesses. Thanks, Rob. I won't spend too much time here. I have mentioned we hadn't proposed much in the way of adjustments to cost. It was a small adjustment proposed on operating expenditure. Thanks, Rob. This is the capital expenditure story of the business. So one thing we did notice about their capital program, I suppose the blue line there you can see in the chart starting in 2017, 2018 up to 21, 22 really shows you how they've been tracking against the forecast for that time. So comparing the light blue and the dark blue line there, the light blue line is what the business actually spent. You can see that's tracking pretty close. So that to us is a good outcome, that the business is spending about what it thought it would. And then you see the profile, which I mentioned earlier. I think there's a 45% increase in capital spend or thereabouts proposed for the next period. And I think we'll go into that a little bit, Rob, but a lot of it's around making sure that the assets are in a good state to comply with health regulatory obligations, dealing with growth, and also investing to ensure the reliability of services over the longer term. So that's been a big focus of the business around its asset planning of late. Thanks, Rob. This same sort of chart for operating costs, this shows you, so the blue line there is what was, I guess it's forecast spend in current prices. The lighter line there shows that to be higher over the current period. I don't think South Gippsland Water is an outlier in having actual costs higher than forecast at that time. We've had things like COVID, which have challenged businesses around costs or increase in chemicals and input costs for the businesses. That difference there for South Gippsland Water is about the industry average. So it hasn't done, I guess, compared to the rest of the sector too badly in terms of cost control. Projected forward to sort of remain fairly flat over the period. That's important because that's a key driver of prices. So thanks, Rob. I mentioned Primo earlier without going too much into it, but why this goes to some of the elements of why we've approved the submission put forward by South Gippsland Water. It has been generally met its expectations for delivery against its outcome commitments for the current regulatory period. I think there were things around compliance with wastewater and things like that, but overall the business has delivered what it promised customers. So generally customers got what they paid for. A good engagement program, which gave customers an opportunity to participate and have their say. And also we put a challenge out there to the sector, not just South Gippsland Water, to make sure it's engaged, more inclusive and diverse, and we have seen that come through. Its outcome measures and targets, so what a business plans to deliver its customers in terms of services comes into this. So its engagement program did inform what the businesses put forward and did outline some improvements in some areas for customers. So increasing prices, a bit better outcomes for customers in terms of service standards over the next 5 years. One thing that the business has done is recognising affordability issues, and also I think the near-term outlook is proposed to charge. It could charge up here. It's proposed to charge a bit lower than what it could ask for. And I think the submission went into the issues around. You did discuss with your community a lot around the impacts on vulnerable customers in your submission, and that's why the business put forward a proposal to charge lower prices than what it could in theory. So that's a good strength of the submission. Thanks, Rob. So under the draft decision, prices will increase in real terms before inflation. So inflation will pass through on top of those, as I said earlier. high quality drinking water and safe treatment of sewerage, and new investments in waterways as well also occur under the proposal, and has outlined a strong commitment to reduce its environmental footprint and also respond to climate change, which also aligns with some of the challenges. So I think that's the summary, a high level summary. I think it's over to Rob.
That's right. So we'll have an opportunity, if you've got any questions about elements of Dean's presentation, we can come back to that after Rob's outlined the response. I'm just wondering if we should swap around and maybe should we close these doors to keep
Everyone, yeah, agreed in the room.
Thanks, Rob. Got your slides up.
Great. Thanks, Dean, and thanks to the Commission for the opportunity today to present our price submission, how we've maximised value for our customers to provide a response to the draft determination. Thanks to the members of our Community Advisory Committee with us here today. You've been with us on the journey all the way, and now that we're at the home stretch, it's great to see you here still with us. I would like to welcome some of the South Gippsland Water staff that are here today. So Lynch, General Manager of Infrastructure Planning, Ross Griggs, Manager of Governance, Risk and Performance, pulled the whole price submission together. Amy Van Dyke, the Acting Manager of Customer Experience, and Miranda Schoenfeld, who's our team leader of community engagement. And Amy and Miranda were heavily involved or engagement. Also online, we have Liz Rowland, who's our General Manager of Transformation, and Tori Groom, who's our General Manager of Corporate Services. And of course, we have looking at Nicola Heppenstall here, our acting chair, standing in for Phil, who's in Italy at the moment. Before I get into the detail, I would like to also acknowledge the traditional owners land that we're meeting on today. So in Verloc here, we're meeting on the land of the Bunurong people. And also want to pay our respects to the iconic with the land we also serves, paying respects to them in past, present, and emerging. So dairy processing is the major industry in our region, and we have two major dairy processors. We have Saputo in Gata, Burrowfields at Carnborough. Both plants need upgrades to their wastewater disposal to allow them to continue at current production levels. And we've been negotiating hard with both those customers over the last 3 years or so to come up with solutions that are both technically viable and commercially viable for us and those businesses. So in the next price period, we'll be investing in assets to secure those critical customers in our area. We've also engaged extensively with customers, including vulnerable customers, and Dean's laid that out well, and advocates of vulnerable customers. And a core pillar of our price submission is to protect our customers. As Dean said, we plan to charge less than what we actually could charge under the regulatory model, and that really is to protect those vulnerable customers. We've got a new co-payment scheme, and we've expanded our customer support program. In addition to that, we're driving ourselves hard as a business. We're challenging ourselves to be even more efficient, and we've got a fairly ambitious efficiency target, and customers see the benefit of that. We're also committed to being carbon neutral by 2035, and 100% renewable energy by 2025. So protection of the environment is extremely important to us. And we've tightened and clarified some of the wording in our customer outcomes. So customers are getting better service from us and better clarity on actually providing. That customers can hold ourselves to account, hold us to account to our commitments. So next slide. So just very quickly a bit about South Gippsland Water. So the service area goes from Watagi, Kuon and Nyora in the west, all the way over to Yarra in the east, about 4,000 square kilometres, 21 towns, 23,000 customers, population of about 40,000. We've several disparate systems, so we've got 8 different water supply systems. That is strengths and it has weaknesses. It's got challenges to us in terms of economies of scale, distance to service, resilience, but also it's got the strength in that the water systems are localised and close to the customers, so they're close to the users of those systems. This system over here, Wantagee, Inverloch, Cornborough, that's our biggest system. It's about 60, little over 60%, 63% or so of our total water supply. And in recent years, we connected Cornborough, Coolwell, Loch and Iora to that system. That system is actually connected into the Melbourne supply. So it is our most secure system. And as I said, our two biggest customers are Coolwell and Border Foods. So through developing the submission, we engaged with over 900 customers across 20 of the 21 towns. And we use various channels to engage. So to maximise the opportunity that customers have to engage with us, we use surveys, community visits, workshops, personal interviews, and importantly, our community advisory committee. And this wasn't a one-off engagement process. This engagement was building on our price submission in 2020 and also the engagement we did for our urban water strategy in between. And we engaged with a broad cross-section across our community, owners and occupiers, tenants, businesses, developers, and also across various demographics, pensioners, families, Indigenous people, people with additional needs, concession card holders. Importantly, we commissioned an independent study into the needs of people experiencing payment difficulties. We really wanted to understand their views, find the right balance between price, affordability, service, and our investment into the future. And the price submission has been developed in partnership with our customers and it's guided by what they told us. So they value safe, clean drinking water and our wastewater services. And they expect to be able to rely on us to deliver the services we provide. They expect us to maintain and renew our assets. They want us to ensure water security. They support greater investment in wastewater treatment to meet compliance obligations, keep pace with demands in our growing region. And they're interested in and support our investment programs to protect the environment, including our carbon neutral pledge. Sorry, so the next slide, please. So we hold ourselves to account. How we hold ourselves to account, as Dean mentioned, is we have customer commitments, and we made several commitments to our customers in our 2020 price submission, and we report back on that performance to our customers. As you can see there, we generally performed well. And while we'd like to see green across the board, in some ways it's good not to see green all across the board, because that means we've actually challenged ourselves. And if we saw green across the board, the first thing we'd be thinking is we've set targets that really aren't high enough and that we knew were easy to achieve. What we've used this information then is it's highlighted to us, particularly wastewater with the two reds there, that our performance hasn't been where we wanted to be in wastewater. So we've brought forward capital investment into our wastewater systems to help that performance, and we included substantial investment in the next price period to help us address some of those deficiencies. Our customers are very satisfied with our performance, and they have been for quite some time. Over the last few years, we've consistently scored satisfaction in the high 80s and as high as 90%. Our customers believe we also provide value for money. Very close to our customers and our community more broadly. They're part of our fabric, and they identify closely with us. Very proud of that. So our commitment to our customers is to prioritise our capital programme and to maintain service levels for the long term. And we're going to continue to hold ourselves to account to higher standards and even more transparency. Recognising that we're investing to improve the taste and odour of water supplies will increase the target for customers who prefer to drink water. As we said, wastewater is a key area for our customers and an area where we always have met our targets. And we include two new measures here. We include quantified measures linked to our carbon pledge so customers can see how we're tracking to achieving carbon neutrality in 2035. All right. And we back ourselves that our customers will continue to be very satisfied and increase our target for customer satisfaction. We strengthened some of our customer outcome measures to increase our accountability and transparency by the adoption of a new guaranteed service level around water quality. And this again was a learning from experience. And we value being open and transparent. Customer engagement program has informed our performance metrics, customer support programs, program prioritization, and risk assessments, service demand, and waste management. As you can see, our price submission is designed to deliver against the greatest value to our customers and community. That's hard. Please. Because it's
We get the right slide. Only one behind.
next one now. Yeah, that's it. So customers emphasise the importance of programs for people experiencing financial vulnerability, including small businesses. We've heard directly from customers who have experienced difficulties making payments, and we're providing more support to them. Building on the targeted work we completed over COVID-19 and small business program completed for developer price submission, we have included learnings from our customer support program and updated our policies to extend assistance to businesses that may experience difficulty. We will introduce additional support, including a co-payment program for eligible customers. To ensure the program is beneficial to customers and hold themselves to account, we included a new measure around this and customer outcomes. And we committed additional funds to the state government's community rebate scheme. There is us within. And as Dean mentioned, key to our price submission is we're proposing to absorb about $7 million of costs that we are incurring as a business and not passing on to our customers. So that's purely driven to keep our prices low and protect our customers. Next slide, please. So we welcome the EAC's draft determination, and we note that the EAC generally agreed that we've met our customer commitments. We accept the findings around slightly lower operating costs and revenue requirement. We note that the EAC believes our capital investment program is prudent and efficient and propose to approve it in full. And we're also happy that the EAC acknowledged the strength of our engagement program, particularly around the price pack. And also we're proud to believe that we address the interests of low-income vulnerable tenants. There are a few areas that we need to respond to the EAC on. That's what the team said. As I said, we're investing heavily in the Venus Bay outfall pipeline for those two crucial customers in Lingata and Carramurra. And we're deep in negotiations with both those customers at the moment. And that asset is purely for those two customers. So the rest of the customer base doesn't get any service delivery out of that asset. So those negotiations are focused on ensuring that the beneficiaries of that asset, so those two customers, pay wholly for the capital investment and the operating costs of that asset. And we provide substantiation to the EAC to demonstrate that. EAC are proposing some changes to our opening regulatory asset base, which I will be responding to that we accepted. There are also some questions about our new customer contributions and developer charges, as Dean said. And so they're the charges that the developers pay for us to invest in new assets to provide services to new houses. We believe it's important that developers do pay their fair share, because if developers don't pay, there has to be a wider customer base. We've used due practice in calculating those developer charges and practices that we've used in the previous price submissions. We'll again provide substantiation to the EAC to demonstrate that. Finally, the EAC, as Dean said, have asked us about inflation and how much of CPI we pass on to customers. We're still working through this as a business. We do know that our costs have increased substantially as well. Chemicals and electricity have increased significantly. Everyone is experiencing cost pressures. And as we said, we have substantial supports in place for our vulnerable customers. So in summary, our submission includes our long-term strategy to secure the services for our region, to deliver those in an environmentally sustainable manner, and to contribute to the resilience of the communities and businesses that we're privileged to serve. Delivering the key operational capital programs outlined in our submission will ensure that we can meet the needs of our growing region and continue to provide reliable services to our residential and business customers into the future. Our price submission is designed to deliver against the areas of greatest value to our customers and community, and it has our customers and community at its heart. We're supporting our vulnerable customers in several ways, in addition to supports that we've always had in place for our customers. And finally, we welcome the EAC's draft determination, and we look forward to the final decision. And just to close, I would like to thank all the people in South Gippsland Water and our community advisors for contributing to to the development of our solution. It's a huge effort, and in business of our size, it's a whole of business effort. So, thank all our people for their efforts.
Thank you, Rob, for a very comprehensive outline of your submission and also how you propose to respond to the issues we've raised. Thank you, Dean, for comprehensive discussion of our role in this process. Now's the time where we're opening up questions. I mean, we've put a lot of information to you, but a chance for any of you here to ask any queries or have any comments on what's been presented. Personally, I work on the Commission's vulnerability strategy, the Getting to Fair, and which I think, given the period we've just been through, was critically important. There's always been vulnerable people in the community who need the support that organisations like yourself are able to provide, but that really brought it front and centre, and it's great that that's an important element of how you're trying to improve and build on that going forward, as well as keeping prices as low as they possibly can be for the broader community. So just open up to questions from people here, and then we'll take some if there are any questions online as well. Does anyone want any questions or queries or comments? Yes.
Yeah, look, I just want to thank Rob for really making an effort for your customers and vulnerable customers. I think that's terrific. And I'm sort of curious about the two customers for the Venus Day Out for customers.
That's the two milk factories, the Saputo milk factory in Ligata and the Borough Foods factory in Carnarvon. You know, so they have a specific outfall pipe because their wastewater is a specific standard that actually can go into the ocean without further treatment. We transfer it from, but actually at the moment it's only Saputo up. In the future it's planned to be Borough Foods as well. So we transfer that wastewater from the Saputo milk factory and discharge it off Venus Bay.
Presumably they're big employers. So
huge employers
to make sure that's
employers. Yeah, they contribute. Well, they contribute about 60 million to the directly. That's just directly through wages, not to mine the wives.
Fantastic. I have a technical question. You mentioned that our water in this part of the region is supplemented with Melbourne water. So what we saw the last time with the Lance Creek Reservoir, that is actually linked and it's supplemented.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. So we effectively have two water sources for the system here, which is why it's our most secure system.
Right. Is that something you can switch over, or is it somehow mixed? It's
Yeah, ordinarily it runs with a bit of a blend.
Okay.
But at times we can run entirely off the Melbourne water supply, and times we can run entirely off the local reservoir. And at peak demand times, we need both sources. But anything outside peak demand time, we can use one of the other sources. We tend to use the local supply in preference to the Melbourne supply, just to hold that Melbourne supply in reserve for future needs. Occasionally, our Lance Creek reservoirs gets algal blooms.
Yes.
And the algae in the reservoir can taste an odour of the water.
Yes.
So those times we either stop or reduce the amount of local supply, and we increase the amount of Melbourne supply to just to give the best possible taste to customers.
Okay, yeah. Actually, another thing was a technical thing as well. I did a little bit of research. Lance Creek Reservoir is about 75 metres above sea level, and where we live on top of the hill in Wonthaggi is about 55. So that gives about 20 metres ahead max without any flow, and that works out to about 2 bar, which I reckon is on the low side of. I know I mentioned this before, so I know that our water pressure is. If I had to squirt water to the top of it, to put out a fire on the roof or something like that, I don't think it would reach. But I know you mentioned last time that there was some plan in the future to up the pressure.
Yeah. There is. So what happens in Wonthaggi is the water comes from Lance Creek water treatment plant.
Yep.
Flows down the hill, and there's a water storage basin just outside of the town.
Okay.
It's just to the north of the bus highway. It's about called Main Road. It's pumped from there up into the tower.
Oh, right.
And then it flows through the tower.
Oh, so from the tower. The tower is actually there. Yeah.
But starting next year, we're doing some further work to improve assuring highest part of Wonthaggi, because all that growth in the north and east of Wonthaggi, that's going to slowly reduce the pressure of existing customers. So there's an area of the reticulation system which we're going to separate from the rest of the network,
Okay.
and we're going to put in a booster pump range. We're planning to start that work next year.
Okay. Thank you.
We talked about the Melbourne water supply and the Lance Creek water supply. Does the desal have any, like, do we get water from the desal?
When it's in operation, yeah, because
Okay.
there's a pipeline from the desal plant to Cardinia Reservoir, and that's how the desal water gets into the Melbourne system. So when that's running, the water we take off that pipeline is desalinated water. When it's not running like at the moment, the water flows backwards from Cardinia down to our offtake point, and we've got Cardinia water.
Have we got any questions online?
Not yet, Simon.
Yes. Okay, well,
Well, can I just ask, Rob, would it possible to go back to slide 23 on your presentation and just talk through that?
Yeah.
A little bit more. It's difficult to read. I suppose the concern in terms of the amber issues, like, I'm assuming that's things which you haven't quite managed to achieve. Maybe you could talk to some of those issues and how you hope to resolve those the current budget.
Was it this slide?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. It's just my feeling, I think. I'm feeling fine.
okay, so can someone, perhaps Rob, you could read out the
So the
rows.
Sorry,
Rob.
this Rob.
No, you can, Rob, whichever Rob is.
Too many rocks.
Planning has been dropped off. So the reliability, water, wastewater, environment, and integrity. So dealing with the two reds, the two reds for wastewater, they're one of them was an incident we had in the Corumburra system where there was an illegal discharge into the Corumburra sewerage network. We never found the source of that illegal discharge. It was quite a toxic discharge, and it ended up killing the bugs effectively at the wastewater treatment plant, which then meant the wastewater treatment plant wasn't performing as it should, and the discharge into the creek was not compliant. So we've done work in our network to obviously try to track back that interaction, tightened up the objective management or trade waste agreements to so something like that does happen in the future, better way of finding it. And the other one I believe was Foster wastewater treatment there in 2019 or so, 2020. And we've got substantial investment in the next 5 years planned for Foster.
So is that something like when there's a flood event?
Yeah.
So this is the challenge with climate change when we're getting more extreme weather. You've got to prepare your assets to be able to still keep water standards despite the fact that we might get more flood events.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's higher. I think it's higher annual volume as well, isn't it? Foster.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so there's a bit of growth occurring in Foster, which is challenging the treatment plant capacity. The other thing we're doing at Canberra is right now we're building new emergency storage again to give ourselves more resilience in the face of climate change and also some those sorts of trade waste risks that we get into as well. It's going to go from 3 megalitres to about 14, I believe, which is happening with.
Can I add to yours? Could we flip to the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
Which was now the next one, I think. Yep, this one. So this slide here relates to our those outcomes grant. So with respect to that one, I think it was the wastewater outcome, and our measure for this reporting period was when we got a notification from the EPA. So when something was really, really serious. Part of our program in the price submission this time around, recognising that our performance there wasn't really quite good enough, we've changed that measure. So now it's our internal reporting mechanisms of incidents. So it's a lower grade of incident that we're going to be reporting upon. So we sort of increased the transparency around that, but also our internal accountability for wastewater and our discharge, that even if there's a small thing that comes up, we're monitoring it, responding to it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I might. So one of the things there is not just, we monitor those things anyway, but we want to make sure that the investment we're making in this area delivers better outcomes, not just a reduction in EPA notices. And I think that's really important to think about when going, how do we want to be evaluated for our success?
Yeah.
So it links to that return on the investment.
Yeah, and where do we place our
So the EPA take independent water samples to this, so from the waste. Is that how it was?
No. So there are incidents that we're required to inform EPA because they're outside the guidelines.
Because they picked up that incident or something.
Well, that's because, yeah.
So I don't know who the EPA and we do this morning, they're doing real-time monitoring sites subscribers.
Yeah. Oh, so the ones we're talking about here are the same to we've reached the license. Now this is why.
No. This in the price submission, which I think is a great thing that we want the whole organisation to be involved. Did you? Oh, no, no,
The amount of time that's around those. Seem a bit.
Yeah.
And the more sensitive I think, sort of give you information is best because it's payments. That's going to.
Absolutely. And what's important is the environment, not the EPA is important as our regulator, but the environment is important.
But regulators are important. What was the other? Some of the other animal ones.
Pretty some help now with some of these other ones.
Yeah.
That's why I'm on the team here.
Yeah,
it's good.
The reliability one and water one from 2019, 2018, 19. Do we know what it was?
Yeah. So how the outcomes have worked out in that overall table is that there's a number of measures underneath each one. With reliability, that's around our service standards. So we've got 3 measures under that to relate to water. And you know how many incidents they are and how long it takes us to respond. And the other one is wastewater, and that's the time it takes for us to respond to an incident. So I'll actually point us to the amber one or the yellow one that's in this year. That's with respect to our response times, primarily to a pressure wastewater system in Coorong-Lochnaura, and that is around, it's taking us a reasonable amount of time to get there, over above our 30 minutes that we're allowed in the measure, and that's purely due to distance of that system and the amount of breaks that we've had within that system. So even though it is one measure out of the 3, we're over cautious in putting yellow on it, and that we need to be alert to that because we need to watch our processes and our investment in that area. So we've talked about wastewater. The other one was
You read that?
Environment for us, 2 under environment.
Be environmentally responsible, sustainable, and adapt to future impacted by climate variability. So
yes.
that's these 2 here.
Yeah, and that's our emissions, and our the measure on that is related to our solar program, and they're in yellow or amber because the delivery time frame of our solar program wasn't quite up to what we expected it to be. It was a little bit below target, and so we've got a cumulative effect there in how we're gathering our emissions. I don't know what it is for this year that I put yellow because I anticipate that we may not have caught up to losing that time in how we constructed the solar, and I think that was during.
It was just during COVID.
Yeah.
So we went through a program of retrofitting a whole bunch of sites which have got a high power demand with behind-the-meter solar facilities. And that includes things like the Lunch Creek water treatment plant. And we awarded a major contract just at the beginning of COVID time. And during that COVID period, there were times when the contractors couldn't get to site to to do the construction work that was necessary. We saw the program would slip out by about a year or so, eventually. And because of that, we'd already made a commitment around total emissions for a particular year, factoring in the reduction that we'd achieved through the behind the meter solar program. And because of that, we did target.
Yeah.
So good. We're catching up. Made the programs in place, the solar solutions. The actual NICET emissions records through the period is sort of reflecting the delay that we incurred.
Yeah. So this has also been a learning for us in this review time in strengthening our measures around that, and we've proposed to change our measure to strengthen it from that one element of the program to link it to our net zero ambition as a real focus of the organisation that we're aiming to get to that place and accountability.
Is there any consideration for biodiversity? All of that.
Yep. So right at the moment, historically, we've done quite a lot of work in terms of revegetation around some of our reservoirs. The West Creek Reservoir is a really good example. At one stage, there was very little vegetation all the way up to the water, and we went through a process quite a few years ago, replanting, and we did that for some more different benefits. Primarily interested in raw water quality. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Now, there's further work we can do in terms of in the West Creek catchment. It's a 20 kilometre square catchment. A lot of it is private, and so we don't own it and control it. A lot of it is like beef and dairy. And so we've got a project going on right at the moment looking at reservoir health. So that's got two facets to it. One is the consultant, so how we can best manage the quality of water in the reservoir. The second bit of the looking at what we can do in the catchment to improve the water quality of the water before it gets into the reservoir. We're hoping to sort of achieve a couple of benefits from that. One is reduce the chemical use for treating water, producing good tasting clean water and safe water. And the other one is maybe further benefits in terms of biodiversity. The Basque Shire Council did a project over the last 2 or 3 years to replant along what they call biolinks, and that extended as far as the West Creek actually. So that's sort of we're contemplating.
We're also involved in an industry scale biodiversity projects and the whole water industry and water courts are putting together to explore opportunities for, say, a combined program, which increases biodiversity and building some resilience. And 20 square kilometres is not very big, is it? Nice. And then all that water comes from that, all this part of the.
Well, that's 20 square kilometres. It's a 4.2 gigalitre reservoir, but it's then supplemented by the Melbourne's. Yeah, and we're forecasting over time that we will increasingly use water from that system because climate change means that the forecast yield from our local reservoir will decline. At the same time, we've got rises, particularly more baby circulations.
Yes, because what wasn't a statistic that Melbourne water's dams were 25% higher would be without the desal plant. Yeah, that's a significant contributor. Yeah, we're all trying.
Yeah. And it just highlights the importance of catchments. While Lance Creek is 20 kilometres, Ruby Creek at the Leongatha is only 7.
Nice.
So it's catchments are so important to us in the collection of quality water coming into every.
Those reputed areas provide a lot of values, not just waste of water quality, biodiversity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And carbon.
The whole picture.
Any other questions? Anything from online?
Nothing has come up, Simon. I'm just noting the time. There may be people jumping onto other forums. So if there is anyone online now, would be a good time.
Yes.
To ask.
So if there's anyone online joining us online, we'd love to hear if you've got any questions or comments on what you've heard today, or if you're just keen to observe.
I just have one quick one.
Yeah, go. While they're thinking about it,
I'll drop out of some, but you mentioned when we were at the water treatment plant last time, that long term, see that would change and there'll be a more sophisticated one, a more one with, you know, the churners and things like that. But obviously that's a big investment. That's a long term plan is to
This is up
treat water. Yeah, the one in Montague.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And that the water then would be suitable then not just to put into the sea, might be suitable to put into some of the water courses and things like that.
Yeah, or reuse if we can.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Reuse.
Yeah,
The challenge we have is getting a demand for it in this area, given the climate that we have. But yeah, it will be a more sophisticated plant.
Because it must be cheaper to treat water to the point where it's potable than taking water out of the sea and desalinating.
That's right.
So putting it to the sea and then taking it back out, rather than you've got the water there on the land. Make it, I don't know, but I mean, is it? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there are other factors in considering that as well. It's a customer perception.
Yes. Oh well, it wouldn't have to be for drinking. It could be for rural use or something like that.
That's right.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah, environmental flows, as you mentioned.
yes, or just to keep the rivers flowing. Yeah.
a lot of places use it for sporting fields and things like that, don't they? But again, it's a question, there's a cost associated with separate pipes, the permanent pipes, don't they? Yeah, that's right. So it's obviously a few challenges to work out. I don't think we're going to be, you looked at Europe, I think you were saying earlier, there's a lot of people drinking water that's been through multiple times by the time it gets through.
Well, Switzerland has very clean rivers. We used to swim in them, and our wastewater where we lived was treated and was put straight back in the river. Of course, there's towns all the way
down. Yes, exactly.
So, but actually, somehow they keep it pretty clean.
We're a long way from that, I think, in Australia. So, are there any other questions? No one online. They're just observing and enjoying.
Comment about how informative the discussion.
Good. They're missing out on the sandwiches, unfortunately. But is there anything you wanted to add to?
No, been good. Thanks for the today. It's great. Thanks to the same. I'm sure we do that self-sign.
Yeah, look, firstly, I'd like to thank those of you who've come along today from the community. I know this is a one-off. I get a sense that you've been very actively involved in the process on the way through, and this is really important. You know, we think of these as monopoly businesses where price is not going to drive whether you choose what product or another. This is how you signal how it can meet the needs of your own needs, but the broader community and the environment. So I think these consultation processes are really critical to getting better outcomes for the environment and for communities, both the broader community and people experiencing vulnerability. So I really think it's great that you've come along. There's an opportunity to contribute further if you want to, on reflection, those of you online or those of you here today, to put in a submission or provide comments through the Engage Victoria or other mechanisms. Also like to thank the South Gippsland Water people for their contributions and for the hard work that goes into getting it to this point. We put a lot of scrutiny and challenge and questions and probing, which must be not always so much fun to be on the other side, but it's great that you're so constructive and positive about it. I think hopefully this will lead to better outcomes for everyone. So thank you for coming along today, and thank you for the ESC team for making the technology work. So thank you all. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.